Well, hello. I'm Ashley, and today we are going to be talking about resume basics. We're really going to focus on resume structure. We're not going to be focusing on the content as much, but just building the resume from scratch. So, a few of the things that I wanted to mention before we dig into the resume is that, I've worked with hundreds of hiring managers before, and a lot of this information comes from what is it that they are looking for. So when we're going through this resume today, I just want you to remember that a lot of this information comes from that experience, but every hiring manager is different. And so there is no one right answer. There is no one perfect answer, but there's definitely, hey, here are some things we know about what hiring managers are looking for, and this is how you might be able to structure. So we are looking at a screen here. This document that you're looking at here is actually in the course module. Just labeled it successful candidate. It's a structured resume. It has almost no content in it. But this is here to help you, say, if you had a resume that you were starting from scratch, build your resume up. So, one of the first things I want to talk about today is that hiring managers can spot templates from a mile away. And one of the best things you can do for your resume is to open a blank page and start your resume from scratch. Building in a template, it just kind of shows that you didn't start from that scratch, that this content is just kind of built into a template. How much did you think about that, content? How much did you really put in? How much effort did you put into building your resume? So you really want the hiring manager to feel like you did put that effort in to build the resume. And one of the ways you can do that is by starting from scratch. So I'm hoping that you have either a blank page where you can take some notes, or your current resume that you can either take some notes or follow along, maybe make some changes as you follow along. The other thing about this video is you can absolutely be pausing, make your change, move on to the next change, and so on and so forth. So this video is going to be a little bit longer, but I promise by the end, you'll have a little bit better idea of how to structure your resume. Okay, couple thoughts as we jump in. Before we even talk about what's on the page, let's just talk about the page itself. So we already talked about how a template is not necessarily the best way to go. Building your resume from scratch is an awesome way to go. Couple things about what you're putting on the paper. One of the best ways to fit a lot of information on a piece of paper is, or at least one document, is by going with margins that are 0.5 inches. What that's going to do is you can see along this line, I'm going to scroll in a little bit. We've got 0.5 margins all the way around, and that allows a lot more information on one page. It is really good to have one page for your resume. It does not mean that that is the only way to do it. What I wouldn't have for a resume, this is not a CV, but for a resume, what I would do is try to make it no more than 2 pages. It isn't always necessary to put every single piece of experience you've had into a resume. What's most important is that you put the highlights of the pieces that you can offer and the value you can offer to the organization onto the page. They want to see that alignment with the job description. Okay, so we'll talk about that later, but for the most part, I'm just giving you tips on how to make the most amount, the best use of your one page, slash maybe 2 pages if you need to go above that, if you had a lot of experience. So the other thing I would think through is you can also go down to, this is right now, this is 12-point font. Oh, actually, it looks like it's 10-point font. But 10-point font, I would not go any lower than 10-point font. But if you are feeling like, wow, my resume, it's got a lot in it, but it's going over that one page space, maybe see if you might want to change your font down to 10 and see if that helps pull it into one page. If you have the most relevant experience and it all fits in, keep going with your resume. It's okay to make it 2 pages long. All right. That kind of helps to get you started in terms of how to format your page. Let's actually talk about the page itself. So we've heard things, and maybe you've heard things before, like, oh, you want to stand out as a candidate. And the best way to stand out is to put color on the page, or, make boxes, or make it colorful, or art and creative. Make the elements creative. But I'm here to tell you that employers are looking at your resume in between 30 to 60 seconds, and they're making a decision on that resume within that time. It's not a lot of time. If their eyes are being drawn to the color and the art elements of your page, it is going to take away from the important information they need to know, which is this information here, the pieces and the value that you can offer to the employer, the skill sets. So, one thing to think about is, that you can see this resume is fairly plain, but it's organized and it's easy to find the information. And that's really what you're looking for. So you're going to start with your heading up front. We call this candidate's name is successful candidate. So, your name would be put up bold, biggest piece of the puzzle here. And then your contact information down here. Right now we've got phone number, phone number, address, and email address. Those are the big pieces of information. It's important that you put the address that you are living in. Some people put P.O. boxes, or they put places that maybe their actual address is at. But what the employer is looking for is, do you live close to us? Or if it's a remote job, where do you live? What leverage or what value can you add in the location that you're in? So just remember to put the location that you are in, so that they can kind of make a decision on where you're at and geographically how that might help their organization. Another thing you could add here is a LinkedIn profile URL. That could be helpful as well. Not necessary, but something that would kind of fall in this line. All right, so this is pretty simple. Easy to kind of throw in. Nothing big here. Let's move down to education real quick here. I would like you to notice that for education, the headings for education and experience, they're just slightly smaller than the heading here. And as we move down the headings, we pretty much stay in the same font. We just make the differences in the bold or the non-bolded words to help kind of see the difference between the two pieces. So for your education, you can actually take this exact model and just kind of plug your information in. So you've got school name, and that's if it's a high school, you can put your high school name, city, state, month, year of expected graduation. We'll talk about this in just a minute. If you did earn a degree, you can throw the school name, city, state, put your degree here. You'll want to spell that out. So a bachelor's in arts in psychology, say, for example, or here's an example, a bachelor's of arts in Spanish. So really spell out what this is. Sometimes a candidate has earned a bachelor's of science. Sometimes it's a bachelor's of arts. We just want to make it very clear what that is. Okay, and then you're going to throw, if you have earned a degree, throw the major, the concentration here. All right, so this is, again, very straightforward. Let's move over here. This is the actual example that, I'd like you to use if you're really going to kind of throw in a structure to your resume. And employers are looking for, when is the first time I can have you? If there's a qualification of a bachelor's of arts in Spanish, when is the first time I can actually hire you? So this graduation date is May of 2009. If you're maybe going to graduate in 2024, or maybe in the future, say 2024, it's 2022 right now, then you would put that, your expected graduation date, May of 2024. So that means, hey, look, I'm looking maybe for an experience before I graduate, and this is the first time that you can hire me into a full-time role that requires the qualification of Bachelor's of Arts in Spanish. All right. You can put ranges here, but like I said, this is a way to kind of cut down on some of those words and help employers see right away, this is when I'm planning on graduating. All right. I'm kind of moving slow here as I move down to experience. So with experience, there are a couple things I want to talk about before we dig into the actual experience structure. So I have heard the question many times, well, I've worked at this one job. Let's say I'm going to use my own experience, an ice cream space. Ice cream shop, worked for it for many years, did it to help me through college, did it to help as I was in high school, made some money, learned some great things. Okay. But I also worked this other experience. It wasn't a job, but it's definitely more relevant to the job that I'm applying for. Okay, so I'll give you an example. I worked as a tutor at a college. And so at that time, that job was a lot more related to the work I wanted to be in. But the work that I was doing, that was really the full time work I was doing, was at an ice cream shop. So what happens is, well, my ice cream shop would kind of come up here, right? And I would put all these bullet points and I would make sure everybody can see that I worked at the ice cream shop. Because chronologically, I had been working at the ice cream shop for a long amount of time before I had worked as a tutor. But the tutor is the one I want them to see first because this is the job that I'm trying to get. So what we can do here is we can actually write in here related experience. And then that would allow us to put that tutoring job up at the top so that related experience is actually the first thing that the employer sees. And then all of that ice cream shop experience would actually go down at work experience. You can see that kind of pulled in. I created a new one. So that's font 14. So I'm going to actually create this and make it 14. Boom. Now that related experience can throw up at the top and it's the first thing they see. And then all that other experience that I have that is still transferable and very good, it's something they'll see next. So you can see I've got some examples here, but I just wanted to kind of show that because it's one of the biggest questions I get in terms of experiences. I just don't want my related experience to be hidden down at the bottom where they really don't see it right away. So this is one way you can chunk it out so that you can get the right experiences up. Okay, so you can see this is where we can start to plug information in. We have a module completely dedicated to writing bullet points. So I'm not going to go into writing bullet points, but I did want you to see where those bullet points would go. So position title, employer name, employer location, dates of hire. Simple. You're able to just kind of throw those in. If you'd like to make distinctions between any of them, you can bold them, you can make them italicized, you can bold and italicize, whatever works for you, as long as you carry that formatting through all the way down the experience sections of your resume. So for example, if you bold your position title, then you want to make sure you bold your position title here and so on and so forth. If you italicize the employer name, which we can do, you'll want to come down, make sure all employer names are italicized. Consistency is really important because, again, 30 seconds to a minute, you just want it to make sense. And our brains, they really look for those patterns. And so we want to make sure those patterns are clear right up front. Okay. When you are, so you've kind of got I'm going to scroll back up to the top for just a second. You've got your headings, you've got your education very clearly stated. Yes, I'm qualified for this role education-wise. We'd like to have education up at the top because it's easy for them to find. And once a hiring manager sees that person's qualified, no more information needs to be had on the education. They can actually move on to the experience. And that's where their eyes should be going, right? Is really reading about what value and what skills can you add to their organization. Okay, jumping down a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about bullet points here, and then we're going to move on to the last section of this resume. So for bullet points, there's a couple things here. And again, I'm not going to go into this. You can look at this on your own because today we're just talking about structure. But I will be moving into this a little bit later. I'll be using the same example for writing bullet points. But you want at least 3 bullet points per experience. If you can't, I have this question asked a lot. I did this 2-week awesome experience, but it was only 2 weeks. Is it something I should put on my resume? And I don't think about that time frame. I want to know, what is the quality of the experience? So I asked them, can you pull 3 different stories out of that experience that add value and have skill sets and put it into your resume? And if the answer is yes, throw it in your resume. If the answer is no, don't put it in. It's not necessarily worth it. It's something you can talk about. Doesn't mean it's not part of your story, and it doesn't mean it's not part of your journey. It might be something you talk about in an interview. It might be something you talk about when you're networking with somebody. But either way, it might not have a place in your resume because it's not part of your highlights reel. It's not something that they might want to see right up front here. So 3 bullet points at the very least, and then you can add on for there. Now, if you have one really amazing experience and you want to make sure that that's indicated here, definitely put more. If you have that related experience and you can put 7, 8, 9 bullet points there it's really, we're going to talk about the value and the skills and in later modules and how you can actually build them in. But if you can find them, put them in. And then if you say have that ice cream shop experience that comes down work experience, let's say I probably did in 10 years, 100 different types of things working at an ice cream shop. But maybe for this particular position, those skills aren't transferring. So maybe I put the top 3 or 4 that are going to transfer into my resume. I don't have to put everything. I just want to put the things that are going to resonate with this hiring manager. All right. So that kind of talks about our related experience, our work experience, and our experience section. Like I said, this is just the structure. We are going to go into values, skills, and building better bullet points down the line and a few other modules we have coming up here. Last thing about experience is just dates of hire. Definitely make sure that your dates of hire are written in a way that employers can see and read them quickly. When we put numbers in here, let's say 8 2002 through 8 of 2003. That is a little bit harder for an employer to read and see. Okay, I got to do the math. 8 is August. August is, okay, that's about 1 year. Versus if you were to write these dates out, August of 2002. Let's see if I can get this. I'm not the best speller. Feel free to laugh at me, with me, whatever works for you. But if you threw in August like this, you're going to cut down that time that hiring manager might have to do a little math or whatever that looks like. For the reading it's going to look a lot better. This is not where this should go. What I would do is I would end up pushing it here. Here it comes. Here it comes. There we go. Right align it. Right align it. Right to the very edge there. And that is what it should look like. Okay. Perfect. Last section. We're going to move down to skills. So, biggest thing I see that people put on their resume is just a whole list of skills. Just everything. Like, I could do all these things. We're going to talk about skills later. So I'm not going to go into it a ton right now because now we're going to talk about structure. But what I did want to make sure here is that you're including skills that are non-transferable. And we're going to talk about that later. But this is going to look like a list. And this section should be written like this. I have a technical or a non-transferable skill in Google Suite, Excel, Qualtrics, Prezi, fluent in Spanish, Microsoft Suite, anything like that. Biggest thing I want you to just kind of process right now. Soft skills should be written into the bullet points. Hard skills can be included in this section. So what I've seen a lot is I have people, list off skills like communication, listening, flexibility, adaptability. You'll see I've had a whole list of these later on in the skills module. But when you're writing those down and you're listing them out, it is really hard for an employer or a hiring manager to know how good you are at that. To be honest, I mean, anyone can write any of those skills down, right? Oh, I really know that hiring managers want to know how great my leadership skills are. So I'm going to write leadership down as a skill. But it's not going to give them in a good extent to how well your leadership skills are developed. So, what we want to do, and again, just sort of take this in right now because we're going to talk about this later. But what we do want to do is make sure that these bullet points showcase how you developed your leadership skills are using your stories to show those results on how great of a leader you are. So instead of putting them as a list down at the bottom, we want to incorporate them into your bullet points because that's what the hiring managers are looking for. And then things like this, non-transferable skills, things that you can learn through training, Google Suite. Maybe I've done a training on Google Suite and now I'm certified in that. I can actually throw that in a list down here. Okay, so that's going to help them see really quickly like the different real skills that are non-transferable that they might be able to leverage down the line. So I know I threw a lot of like words and thoughts out there. Definitely just think about this, but down the line, couple more modules, we're going to be talking about this a lot, and hopefully I've got a couple graphics and things that you can kind of use to help connect the dots here. All right, so that's really it. That's resume basic structure. Note for the simplicity, this resume is not developed. It is meant to give a baseline on how to structure your resume. So you can see I've got a lot more space here to fill with one page. So I would be developing these bullet points. I would be putting as many experiences that make sense and align with the job description in this resume and kind of move forward like that. So with that, I'm going to sign off on resume basics, and I'm glad you're here learning more about what we're doing with resume structure, and we'll see you soon.